Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Reach Out podcast. As always, I want to express my gratitude towards all the listeners for taking the time to check out this program and for working in your professional development journey. If you haven't checked out our last episode where I interviewed Dalia Shihata, a senior university recruiter from Duolingo, make sure to check it out. And also, check us out on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, wherever you can find me. Pretty sure the Reach Out podcast is over there as well. So also feel free to contact me through email with any suggestions or questions that you might have about the program. And with that said, I am extremely excited for not only the topic that we'll touch on right now, but also because of the guest that is joining us. She's someone that I've been wanting to interview for a long time. And the reason why is because she is the definition of an outgoer, someone that is always looking for opportunities to become better. And people describe her as the driven and never afraid to tackle any challenges in her way. So without further ado, Courtney Weir, welcome to the Reach Out podcast. And how's it going today?
Hi, thank you so much for the introduction. Going pretty well. I'm excited to be on the podcast.
Thank you for being here. As I mentioned, yeah, it's been a while since I always had on the radar to interview Courtney, even since
Yeah.
past interviewees that I had. So it's pretty awesome to have you on.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
So, Courtney, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, where you grew up, your school
hmm
years, and now as a professional as well?
Yeah, so I grew up in Rochester, New York, which is kind of close to the Canada, Toronto area. I went to school at the University at Buffalo. My undergraduate degree is in industrial engineering, and then I did a 5-year fast track program. So I went right into my master's in business administration with a major in supply chain. So that was really fun because there was a lot of overlapping classes, and sometimes I had to run from the engineering class to an MBA course, and I had to kind of pick and choose what I was going to go to that day. Um, but it did save me a year of tuition, and it saved me a year of time. So I was out in the marketplace a lot sooner. And then after I graduated in 2018 with both degrees, I started at a medical company called Harmac. And they're based in Buffalo. They're a medium-sized company, fabulous company. They kind of fly under the radar, but their product is great, high quality. They set the standard for 5S, which I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with 5S, but it's just organization and high quality for medical devices. And then after I did that, as a supply chain manager there, I went on to work for Tesla in Buffalo. So they have a factory there, and we do energy products, so Supercharger 3, solar roof. So I worked on the Supercharger 3 program as a material planner and did a little bit of work with the solar roof project as well. So lots of great opportunities there. And then I raised my hand once I heard that Austin was building a factory for Tesla. I really wanted to be a part of it, and I love Austin. So I said, I'll move down there, do whatever I can to be a part of this. And they interviewed me, it went well, and I went down to Austin. The factory had not been built yet, which was pretty funny. We didn't have anything in terms of standard operating processes. We didn't have a team yet. So my role was to build up the supply chain and to build up a team dedicated to Gigafactory Texas. So I was the supply chain manager for Model Y, and we did all of the onboarding of the new planners. We made sure that we had the right suppliers. We did a lot of work with the global supply managers. And then after that, we switched over to Cybertruck. So once we got that to be sustaining, we switched over to Cybertruck. And yeah, now I'm starting a new role. I'm not sure if we want to transition to that, but that's bringing me up to date with where I am today.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, honestly, me being a supply chain major and being surrounded with a lot of like supply chain students that always have on the radar companies like Tesla and big players like that, it
hmm
was very easy to come across people that are similar to your roles. And it was basically the starting point for this podcast as well. I
hmm
tried to do it initially only supply chain guests, and then someone told me that's kind of dumb. And I was like, okay. But then I always try to keep that same realm, regardless of the people that I bring. So, as like I also wanted to mention,
hmm
it's pretty cool to have you here. And today we're going to talk about excelling through leadership. Now, I'm a big believer that having a positive impact on people is something that you should always strive for. And after reading the things that some of your past co-workers have said about working with you, Courtney, it's clear to me that you fulfilled that objective very successfully. So I want to ask you, how does having a positive impact on people contribute to your success?
Yeah, I think my success is because of I think the impact that other people have had on me. And so I want to make sure that I'm giving that back to whoever I can. I know that, like, especially when I was going through college and when I graduated and I was looking for a job, I am where I am today because of the people that helped me, because of the career counselors that helped me, because of Harmac and all the internships that I had. They gave me a shot without really knowing what I was capable of. And so because I've had such great help and support along the way from mentors and career counselors and managers and my friends and my family, I do whatever I can to give that back on a daily basis. So like doing Women in Tesla, that was one way that I was able to give back, hosting workshops, trying to build a community so that way people feel safe and comfortable talking about difficult things. My goal in my any job that I have is to make sure that I'm creating an environment that makes people feel comfortable and safe, and that they're excited to come into work and they're excited to have new projects and speak up if they feel they have an idea. And I think that's really why when they're successful, I'm successful. And that's really my main focus as a leader, is making sure that I'm giving people the opportunity to show up as themselves.
Awesome. Yeah. I think that what you mentioned about their success is your success is something that everyone in a leadership position should strive for as well.
Mm-hmm.
That obviously recalls me and like brings me back to my past bosses, and I always
Mm-hmm.
want to mention Minvo, my past boss in this
Mm-hmm.
financial planning company, and he was always looking out for me, regardless of the fact that he was extremely busy and he was basically the owner of the company. He always had the time to sit down with me and explore my goals, explore my ideas, my
Mm-hmm.
questions, and as an employee and as a college student, it made me feel really comfortable and really like encouraged to just give my 100%. So I'm sure that
Yeah.
people that have worked with you obviously appreciate that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I want all the listeners to take into account as well whenever they transition into the professional world, because it's very easy to just have this like focused, like very individual perspective on their career, but
Right.
it's very important to help other people around you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've had that mentality in the past too, where I'm so focused on making sure that I'm winning. And in the end, like it really does matter that you're helping to bring up people with you, and especially women. There's something called the broken rung with women moving into management, and it essentially means that there is a gap in women moving from individual contributor to leadership roles. And so I'm always looking for different ways to help women move up and to help provide an environment where they can show themselves and show what they're capable of.
Mhm.
Because I think when we give people the opportunity to show up, then it's contagious, and it creates an environment and like a lattice, a really strong lattice and culture for everybody to feel comfortable and for everybody to support each other, because we all have bad days. I have bad days. People on my team have had bad days, and we help each other. We can't all be 100% all the time. So it's, when you are feeling 100%, give some of that percent to somebody else, and try to ask them, even like, hey, how's your day going? Is there anything I can do to support you? I have some free bandwidth, is like the corporate word. um, but those are things that can help move us forward as a team and as organizations in a healthy way.
100%. And I love that you mentioned uh, your presence in this empowerment of women, because that is actually my next question. You're a big advocate
Hmm.
for the women empowerment in the business world. Some of your
Yeah.
experience, as you mentioned, includes being the president of the Women in Tesla chapter in New York and also a board member for the same org. but
Hmm.
in the Gigafactory up in Austin. So talk to me more about like that motivation and especially what it
Hmm.
means to you.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about this topic, and there's a lot that I could say about it. I think being a woman in a male-dominated industry, I mean, being a woman in this world today can be difficult, but in a male-dominated industry on top of it can be very difficult. And we tend to gaslight ourselves into thinking that we need to be a different way or into thinking that we did it the wrong way or that we need to be more like a man to be successful. And I've tried it all. I've tried being more like a man, and I've tried, um, you know, going the other direction and being really, really feminine. And there is no right answer. It's just be yourself because that's going to be the most sustainable. And if you try to wear a different mask to work, then you're not going to be able to sustain it and you're going to get exhausted. And I ran into that issue where I burnt out and I realized that I need to start coming to work as who I am. And of course, there is a balance because you don't want to overshare your personal life. You have to have boundaries to a degree. But I also think, the older generation, our parents, they always, at least, the parents that I have talked about, like, hey, make sure that you're being super professional, make sure that you're separating your personal and your professional life. And I did that, but I also think in today's day and age, we're working 24/7. I mean, we're on our phones more than they were. We can't separate it the same way that they did. And so as women, I think when we're already wearing that first mask and then you have to continue to wear that 24/7, it's just exhausting. So I have like a strong motivation around being yourself, encouraging other women to do that, and hopefully being a role model for that. And and being part of Women in Tesla, I wanted to also create an environment so that way other people could be a part of the board and practice their leadership skills in an environment where they can make a mistake and it's okay and we'll work through it together. And we can practice that camaraderie and community. Because there's sharks in the tech world, and you have to be aware of who you're speaking with and who you're talking to. And those are all things to consider. Like the work politics is no joke. So um, I there's a lot to be said about it, but I'm really passionate about making sure that the people who are in my circle are safe and comfortable and that they can show up as who they are. And I encourage other women to also be themselves and to feel free to reach out to me directly or anybody who you feel to be a great role model as a woman in leadership and just ask them questions about, hey, what would you do in this situation? Or like, how could I have said this differently?
Mhm.
And that way we can learn from each other and continue to build each other up instead of being so siloed.
100%. You know, you mentioned a lot of things in that response. Something that really stuck to me is that having that sense of community.
Hmm.
Uh, it's very important, especially for people that I wouldn't say introverted, but they sometimes just feel intimidated by those same people that you mentioned, the sharks in the industry, people that just feel entitled to treat you, especially treat women in a certain way. Uh,
Hmm.
it's very important to have that, which brings me to my next point. Courtney can help. You know, I want to talk
Yeah.
about that amazing blog, and I want to talk about
Yeah.
the motivation behind it, which, and I quote, "I teach people how to speak up and create a life they love." So,
Hmm.
what is the importance that? What is your message behind this blog that you created?
Yeah, I created this because I was experiencing a situation where I felt like I needed help speaking up, and I had somebody help me. And so I was like, well, there's got to be other people that need help with this, especially in the corporate world, especially post COVID, where we're virtual, where things are just different today. So, talking about the things that I think a lot of people shy away from, those are the things that I'm talking about in that blog. And since I posted it, I've had a lot of people reach out to me on LinkedIn and via Substack and ask me questions like, hey, how do I manage my anxiety about work? How do I know if my boss is listening to me in our one on one? How
Mhm.
do I know if I'm going to get promoted and if I'm doing the things that are going to get me promoted? And how do I ask those questions in a way where I'm going to get a real answer and not just a workaround answer? Because, like I said, there's a lot of, like, when you're in the organization, it's harder to have that conversation. So I'd like to be somebody who's outside of the organization, or even if you're in college still, if you're in an internship, like these articles are still helpful for you. And I have a calendar of different articles I'll be writing in the upcoming months. But if anybody has questions or specific topics that they want me to speak on or write about, I'm happy to do that too, just because I want to be putting more resources out there to help people. And my motivation is really just to, like you said, help people create a life that they love and not feel so isolated and burnt out in their role. Um, and I think that can happen really easily early on in people's careers because you go through all of the schooling and you get into your job and you might be like, oh, well, maybe this isn't what I thought it was going to be. This isn't what I wanted it to be. But the great thing about supply chain and really anything to do with engineering or business or operations is that there's so many opportunities and there's so many ways to pivot. So I think the main goal is to make sure that people don't feel stuck and that they know that there's options and resources and people out there who want to help them.
100%. 100%. And I always publish the podcast episodes on my LinkedIn, and you can find me on LinkedIn by my name, Juan Pablo Borges. I'll make
Hmm.
sure to link out the blog, Courtney Can Help, Courtney's blog, because I gave it a read, and over the months, I've been reading it as well. And like one of my favorite ones, which is the most recent one, is like does my work represent who I am?
Hmm.
Which I think is a topic that nobody really talks about, and is a very interesting question that we often have in the back of our heads, but we don't really answer. So we just go about it, ignoring it. So once I link it, make sure to check it out because,
Hmm.
as Courtney said,
Thanks.
even if we're college students, it's really, really helpful. So moving on, this is a two-part question.
Hmm.
Uh, I love hats. I was wearing
Yeah.
my favorite hat today, and I want to start this question by bringing up a very interesting fact about you is that you interned in the supply chain department at New Era Caps. Am I right?
Yes, I did. Yes. I love that company.
Awesome. Yeah. Like, how was, tell me a little bit more about that experience.
Yeah, so I did vendor compliance, which was a different area of supply chain, and I really enjoyed it. First of all, New Era is a great company. They were really fun to work for. I had an amazing boss, Gina Calarico, and she showed me what it means to have fun at work. And I am always grateful for her in that regard. But we did a lot of auditing of our main customers. So, or we were the vendor for them. So, we would partner with certain brands based on what their values are. So, we would ask for, say, like Disney and see if we align with their brand representation. And then, do we want to sell our hats through Disney's brand? And then we would also look at distance of location. Do these brands operate within 30 miles of each other? If that's the case, we can only pick one store, one brand within that radius. Um, so there were a lot of boxes that we had to tick to make sure that we were making the right decision about who was going to be selling our hats. And then, of course, I was working there during the time of the playoffs with the Bills.
Yeah.
So that was a really exciting time. Everybody was downstairs because the headquarters is in Buffalo, and
Yeah.
we have a shop downstairs, and then the office space is above the store. So I was able to go downstairs and see some of the players and see
Oh, wow.
yeah, it was pretty exciting and I loved working for them. And with vendor compliance, it's a lot to do with auditing through contracts. Some of it I didn't love. I mean, like that's very detail like contract reading and can be kind of mundane and boring. But with vendor compliance, you can also do some traveling to the different locations to audit to make sure that the brands that you're partnering with are compliant with the regulations that New Era has. And so making sure that there's no child labor, making sure that they're compliant with those types of regulations and state and federal laws. Those are the types of things that we worked on during my time at New Era.
That's amazing. Yeah, I was reading and investigating a little bit more and saw that you interned there, which, by the way, you're the first person that I know that has
Hmm.
worked in that company. And I love that company. I always get my
Yeah.
hats from New Era,
Yeah,
and it's
I
just really
have
nice.
like 300 hats, I think, still in my guest room just because they just give them away.
They're really good. But
Yeah.
I wanna like big part of our demographic for the Reach Out podcast is college students that are constantly looking for internships and for involvement opportunities around campus. So what do you tell the listeners about the importance of being involved in leadership opportunities from a young age?
Yeah, I think that's huge. Whatever you can do to raise your hand for any sort of leadership opportunity. I did some of the things I did were kind of silly. I mean, I did president of the supply chain club in at University at Buffalo, which everyone says is nerdy, but I thought it was a lot of fun. And we got to set up like I would just call companies in the area and ask them, "Hey, I'm president of the supply chain club at in Buffalo. Can we tour your facility?" And 99% of the time they would say yes. So if you don't have a supply chain club, then create one. I mean, no one's stopping you. The resources at universities are endless, and that's one thing I really miss about being in college is having all of those resources and connections. Um, and there's always alumni that want to reach back out and support students. So being a part of that club introduced me to people at General Motors, which is how I got the internship there. And then I was introduced to people at New Era because we did a tour there. And then of course Xerox. So like it all came together because of the club um, engagement that I had. So I think the first leadership role I had was secretary of industrial engineering club. And so like I just tried to do something. And if like I said, if there's not an option available for you, you can just create a club, just create something. People love to see president of something or on the executive board. You don't have to specify the title. I think it's just important to have that on your resume because what you want to do is build up that resume as much as you can.
100%. You're so right about that. Like I love that's my favorite aspect about being in college is the organizations and the all these resources that we have.
Hmm.
Like I owe like pretty much all of the professional development that I've had, not only as a upcoming professional, but like as a student and as a
Hmm.
person and my friendships. It's all because of the orgs that I'm in.
Hmm.
And it's also like a great way for you to build relationships and to just spread the message of like, hey, you're not alone, you know? People are
Exactly.
still
Yeah.
going through the same thing that you're going.
Yeah, and it's also important to see um, that just like you can. The one thing that I had a lot of trouble with was I always thought, well, am I smart enough? Am I good enough? Am I, all that imposter syndrome? And like you are, like whatever. If you're asking yourself that question, then you already are smart enough. So I think being able to be in organizations like that shows you different calibers of people, and it really shows you that. It's all about tenacity and hard work and who's loud enough and willing to raise their hand as many times as possible, even though they get rejected, and who's resilient enough.
Hmm.
And that's what I really learned. I mean, I learned a lot of that from my dad too, because he was like, I got a bad score on what was it, the ACT or something? Oh no, the GMAT. And so
Oh,
then, which is a hard test. And so then I ended up just taking the ACT and that replaced it or something. So there's just different options. And so if you're looking to achieve something, just keep going and trying because just because you fail once doesn't mean it's not meant for you. It just means that there's another path. Um, so those organizations showed me that because I worked with a lot of really smart people and I just learned how to be like them. And I know there's also like fraternities and sororities, so like maybe that could be an option. I never did it, but there's leadership roles in those organizations too.
yeah, no, you're so right. Like, don't ever feel belittled because
Hmm.
comparing yourself to others,
Right.
'cause they're there to help you, and everyone just wants to help out people. And I'm like this semester, I'm holding like some leadership positions in two organizations, and it's just amazing. Seeing people grow and helping out people like collectively is amazing. I was in a fraternity for a while, It was not my thing, but I have some of my friends that are still there and that completely love it. So shout out to them. All right. So Courtney, you recently
Mhm,
told me that you want to start your own podcast. So can you tell me more about what we'll get to know
mhm.
in this next project of yours?
Yes. So I created a podcast called Not So Corporate with my friend and previous colleague, Riley Horner. We used to work together at Tesla, and we decided that we wanted to start a podcast together to create resources in a community for people who are in the corporate world. So, anybody who has questions about how to navigate difficult conversations in the corporate world, how to structure your one-on-ones with your manager, how to seek out opportunities for promotions. Um, those are the types of things that we're looking to provide resources on within the podcast. We also are bringing on experts in different areas. So, a resume writer will be coming on to talk about the different types of resumes to write for different industries and what things to look out for, what are the major mistakes that people are making. And nowadays, the resumes are a little bit different than they used to be. So we're going to have the most up-to-date information provided on that episode. So things like that are going to be talked about, and anything that people submit for questions, we'll also talk about those, just to provide resources and have a community of people that can talk about these things that don't normally get discussed within organizations.
That is amazing. I love that
Mhm.
idea, honestly, because like just seeing new podcasts emerge is pretty cool, especially whenever it comes to that type of topics, things that obviously people have questions about, and you're helping out people, which is the important part. So I wish you all the best
Thank you.
in this new project. Not so corporate. Stay tuned for that.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
I do want to mention two of the people that I have interviewed for the Reach Out podcast in the past, Alejandro Restrepo and Hussein Hamdan.
Hmm.
These are, you work with them,
Yeah.
and those were two men that eventually gave me your contact. That's how we got in touch.
Hmm.
But now, like throughout the interview, I've seen how obviously when we talked about you was just amazing things that you said, but I saw like a reflection of all the testimonials that I got to read and all the things that you have posted that I've seen not only in your LinkedIn but in your blog, and the way they communicate about their job, how they're so passionate about it is, I feel like a reflection of your leadership style. So I just
Oh,
wanted to say
thank
a
you.
quick shout out to them as well.
Yeah, that's great. They're awesome. I'm glad I got the opportunity to work with them, and I know they're going to be doing some great things in their career.
Yeah. Courtney, moving into the last part of the interview, these are my two favorite questions. So the time machine question is the first one. So
Hmm.
imagine you have a time machine and you go back and you're sitting in front of 20-year-old Courtney. What would you
Yeah.
say to her?
I would say to not worry so much, which I think is an easy thing to say in hindsight. But I think if I were to go back, I would just say, keep doing what you're doing, and the worry isn't going to change anything, and it's only going to get in your way. And I know with people who are in college, students, and people who are just graduating, there's a whole lot of worry and fear that comes with that because there's just a lot of unknown. Um, but if there's any amount of solace that could come with the fact that I had the same level of worry and everything turned out fine. I think just take that and run with it, because it's better to come into every situation with confidence and faith and trust in yourself than to come into it with like worry and fear and that type of energy.
100%. It's very easy for people to just worry about everything and overthink everything and just rely on just the
Hmm.
day-to-day anxiety of things. Definitely very guilty of that. And I would say that, just as you mentioned, things are going to be okay. Things are always going to be okay.
Yep.
And you just got to keep going, keep going. Just know that there's a light like at the end of the tunnel, all the things
Hmm.
that you hear about. So, definitely one of my favorite answers, I would say. And the last question, my favorite question is, Courtney, what makes you happy?
Um, it's kind of cliche, but really helping other people realize their full potential. Because I've spoken to so many people throughout my career, and it's the ones that are so unsure and quiet, and they have this unlimited potential within them. I mean, everybody does, but to watch that be unlocked is what really makes me happy. And so that's what I do in terms of volunteering to be part of these clubs and making the Substack blog and doing the podcast. I love having these conversations with people. So I encourage if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to hear you out and just see if there's anything that I can do to make you realize that you're more capable than you think you are.
100%. As Courtney mentioned, feel free to reach out to her. I'll link her LinkedIn once I upload the episode. So definitely do that. Courtney, it was amazing to have you on this podcast.
Yeah,
Thank you for
thank you.
coming in. And good luck on everything. Good luck in your new position. Good luck in your new podcast. I'm just
Yeah,
very excited for you, honestly, because
thank
like
you so
it's like
much. I
a
appreciate
transitionary
it.
period. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. And for all the listeners, again, thank you all for tuning into this very cool program. Make sure to
Mhm.
reach out to me if you have any questions or suggestions, or if you have someone that you want me to interview. I'm also going to do the work for that. So, yeah, see you on the next one and have a good one.